Thank you so much for joining in. Oprah Winfrey once wisely said, "Books are my past personal freedom." Few books embody this wisdom better. Welcome to the official digital book launch of The Naked Indian Woman by Sangeetha Shinde. This is a book that has given freedom of voice to the everyday Indian woman. It holds within its pages the untold and the daily stories of 16 women in free verse that carry all the headaches and joy of being a female within the Indian socio-cultural context. We welcome you today to hear the unheard voices of Indian daughters and celebrate their courage as they break free of conformity and culture and share their truth. We have a host of celebrities and influencers who have come forward to support the mission of this path-breaking publication. And over the next 4 hours, we hope to take you on a journey of courageous battles and glorious freedom. So without further ado, let's witness the revolution together. For our first panel, we have none other than Mr. Kabir Bedi. Namaste and thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
He is an Indian film actor. His career has spanned 3 continents covering India, United States, and especially Italy among the European countries in 3 media, film, television, and theatre. He is noted for his role as Emperor Shah Jahan in Taj Mahal, An Eternal Love Story, and the villainous Sanjay Verma in the 80s blockbuster Khoon Bhari Maang, and his role as Govinda in the 1983 James Bond film Octopussy. He is the Knight of the Italian Order and an activist who nobly supports the cause of the reading impaired. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Happy to be here. And congratulations on the launch.
Next on, we have none other than Ms. Suhasini Maniratam. Ma'am, పుట్టినప్పటి నుంచి మీ సినిమాలు చూస్తూ నేను పెరిగాను. ఈరోజు మీరు ఇక్కడ ఉన్నారు, మీ ఇంట్రొడక్షన్ చేస్తున్న దానికి థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్. And so to introduce Ms. Suhasini Maniratnam is an Indian actress known for her works in Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, and Telugu films. She made her debut film in 1980, and with that, she won multiple Filmfare Awards and state awards. Suhasini won the National Filmfare Awards for Best Actress for Tamil film Sindhu Vedavi in 1986. She has received 2 Kerala State Film Awards and 3 Filmfare Awards for Best Actress Kannada, 1 Filmfare Award for Best Actress Telugu Tamil State Filmfare Awards, and Nandi Awards. Thank you, ma'am. It's an honor to introduce you. Not just me, my mom is excited here. And welcome all of you for the launch of The Naked Indian Woman. On to you, Dimple. Before that, I would like to introduce the author, the one who brought this together, Sangeetha Shinde, a philanthropist, a published author, publishing 4 books, and today, one of the most revolutionary book, The Naked Indian Woman. Her books have received excellent reviews from Femina, The Indian Express, The Week, The Hindu, BBC, and the UK Tribune. She was listed as number 6 on the landmark list of 20 new writers to look out for. And the last year, she also is a healer and a counselor who works with men and women across the globe who have been through trauma, abuse, or molestation, or any kind of trauma. Sangeetha has been working with women and men from all across the world, and she has been awarded as the most inspirational woman 2019. So Sangeetha, thank you so much for bringing all of us together and being the voice of Indian women. Our moderator today, Ms. Dimple Jangda, is the founder of Prana Healthcare Center. She's a celebrity Ayurvedic and a gut health coach. She was an ex-investment banker, and today she is spreading the awareness about Ayurveda to over 60 celebrities of Hollywood and Bollywood and students from across 40 countries. Dimple, glad to have you here. The platform is yours.
Thank you so much, Sudakshana, for creating a platform where we could celebrate equality between men and women, between gods and demons, and between humans and the other side of our own personalities. I'm really honored and actually flattered to have a panel like this to moderate. My dear friend, Sangeetha Shinde, hearty congratulations to you for launching a book. Even while the rest of the world is dealing with a pandemic, you had the guts to put together stories that are heart-wrenching, that will speak to our souls. You know, if words could liberate our souls, if words could set our souls free, then we have it here. And we need no introduction on the concept of feminism itself. It is a rare gender equality concept that we've been debating and struggling with for the last like hundreds of years. And it's funny that half the world's population is women, and we still have to ask. We still have to ask for the right to be equal. Isn't that strange? Half the world's population is women. The men and the women that are born come from the womb of a mother. And yet she has to ask for the respect, for the credibility, for the conscious awareness that what she's done is beyond human capabilities. To be able to give birth to an entire child is absolutely a form of miracle that we all have within us. And instead of respecting that, a woman has to fight for a right to vote, and a woman has to constantly voice her opinions. For every right and every freedom that we enjoy, there's an entire generation of women in the previous generation that had made a lot of sacrifices so that you and I can enjoy. And Sangeetha has done a wonderful job of bringing together stories of 12 exceptionally strong women who are willing to bare their soul and let people read from the experiences. So thank you so much, Sangeetha, for putting together this beautiful book. If you could unmute yourself, it'll be amazing. Because I'd love for the viewers to see every time you speak, the frame will shift to you. Sangeetha, how was your experience writing this book together? I'm sure it made you cry on some occasions. You can be honest about it.
It really did. It was quite heart-wrenching. So much of the journey mirrored my, so much of the journey of writing the book mirrored my own journey, sort of as a woman, as a young girl, as an adult. And this book in some way has been a sort of very coming-of-age experience for me. It's made me realize what it is I need to do, who it is I need to be. And I am in awe of the women who have spoken out. When I wrote the book, which was at the beginning of lockdown, it was in the back of watching wonderful women, very famous women sort of talking about lockdown. And here I was, with a broken back, lying in the hills in South India, overgrown, sort of 50-year-old teenager, thinking, where's my voice? Why is no one talking about what I'm doing during lockdown? And it kicked off from there. I reached out to about 160 women across various sort of women's networks across the country and overseas. Of those 160 women, only 15 were able to do what I asked them, which was one, tell their stories in all their raw honesty and pain. But my criteria was you put your real name, your real age, and your real location. I have to put that under the story. And of the 160 odd that I spoke to and interviewed, 15 were able to do this. And even of those 15, some of them needed some pretty strong, urging and convincing. But they have written their stories. It was difficult because I decided to self-publish rather than going through a traditional publishing route. And that's had its own challenges, I'll tell you. And Mr. Bedi, I do have to thank you, because when I told you that I was self-publishing, you said it was a good idea to do so, and that sort of really ratified my decision. Thank you very much for that. It was hard writing the stories. It was not fun. The story that Mr. Bedi is going to be reading was probably the hardest one for me to write, because I wrote the story of my own housekeeper. And I had to really put myself in her shoes and look at me through her eyes. And I can tell you I was deeply ashamed of who I actually was as a human. But I'm really hoping, as are all the girls who have told the stories, that this will give women the courage to tell their truth, to say what's going on, to not be ashamed, to not be afraid, to not be, sort of constantly this mantle of shame that hangs over all of us, guilt. I really hope that it's just a drop in a very big ocean, but I hope somewhere, somehow, if even one woman is impacted, it's worth it for me.
That's so nicely said. And it's so inspiring. There's a saying that it's not just the abuser who is at the fault. It's also the person who was abused who's at fault for bearing that abuse, for being in silence. If you can voice your opinions, not only are you giving your abuser an opportunity to reflect on his or her actions and change into a better person, you're also inspiring and telling other women that this is not normal. It is not normal to be abused. That differentiation is a starting point of evolution, learning how to differentiate. But no conversation is complete without the other sex being involved. We can't have a one-sided dialogue. And that's why we're very lucky to have a very famous activist in his own right Honorable Mr. Kabir Bedi on the platform. And I have my first question for you, sir. It's quite obvious you believe in women's rights. That's why you've agreed to be part of this platform. How important is it for us to voice these stories again and again without any trace of negativity? That's another thing that is very important, which Sangeetha has encapsulated in her book. Without hate or without aggressive feminism, where it causes harm to another person, or puts down another part of the human community. How important is it for us to voice these stories in all honesty and be absolutely bare about it? I would like to hear your views on that.
This is very important. There's it's not a question of aggressive feminism or hate, etc. It's just about human rights, about human decency, about giving respect to another human being, which, the way I was brought up, is most fundamental to being a human being. So when that sanctity of a person is violated, when their rights are violated, when they are humiliated, when they are put into situations that are unbearable, there's bound to be anger, there's bound to be hate. You can call it militant feminism to speak out, but it's not. It's a very human thing to do so. So I think it's very important that people speak up, have their voices heard, and people shouldn't feel that what can I as an individual do? How can an individual make a difference? Individuals do make a difference. In the end, it is individuals that create movements. It is individuals that inspire crowds. It is individuals that change history. So individuals, singly or collectively, can be a very, very powerful force. And in putting this collection of very raw stories together, which have so many, so much violence and anger and abuse and intolerance in them, it's good because people who suffer similar things saying, I'm not alone. There are people like me. We all must speak out. We must all raise the consciousness of those around us. This is a very important thing to speak out.
That's so nicely said, especially during a time like this. I would be more flattered if a man stood up for women's rights than a woman asking for it herself, because that means she has to ask for it from someone else. It has to be given to her by a community or by the male species. That doesn't have to be the norm. It has to be men and women both coming forward to speak for the rights of their daughters, their sisters, their mothers, their aunts, and all the women that have raised them collectively. It takes a village to raise a person. And I love that you are willing to speak for the voices or on behalf of the voices of women. I also have with us a very respected actress, Mrs. Suhasini, who has inspired generations of girls and women by her acting skills. I know, Mrs. Suhasini, you've essayed a lot of roles, some of them heartbreaking even, where you've voiced the opinions of your directors and your co-actors. And quite often, you must have been through moments where you felt like crying and saying, wait, this is not right. This doesn't feel right. You probably entered the industry when even, the payment for male and female actors was not even the same back then. You started way ahead of the curve. And you must have faced a lot of challenges yourself. You must have met a lot of women who broke down and who had a lot of stories to tell. I want to hear from your experiences. What does feminism mean to you?
Hi, Sangeetha. Congratulations.
Hi, Ms. Suhasini. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait for you to do your reading. I've been a fan of yours for a very long time, as I told you in the email.
Honored to meet Mr. Bedi also. Huge fan of his. And
aren't we all?
had to say about women and the respect that women deserve, and I've become a bigger fan, sir. Thank you. So you're asking me about how I reacted to things that happened around me. I was in a very protected environment because we had 3 daughters. So we were a majority, so we didn't have to really demand our positions or anything like that, because we were absolute majority and we ruled our home. And thanks to all the men and the women in the family, I didn't know that women were disrespected outside. Okay. Like, I didn't know there was anything called Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam till I came to the city. When I was in the village, I thought all 3 were the same. So similarly, I think respect for women was also something that shocked me when I came to the city, not when I was in the village. Okay, I've occasionally seen a wife being beaten up outside on the road, and then, you know, we all interfered, and the husband would say, it's none of your business, it's my wife, I'm beating her, you get lost. And my heart used to sink when the wife said, it's between him and me, you all get out. See, I think women are caged themselves, you know, they don't want help from outside when they're being abused. You know, I've seen a little bit of that in my village, but when I came to the city is when I saw women being abused and taken for granted. You asked me about how I reacted when I was in the industry. See, I was the only one cinematographer in the industry. So a lot of attention on me. So all the attention was given to me for my work, not for my sex. So I kind of somehow escaped from being abused because of my sex or being disrespected. So that was an advantage for me. But what happened was I became this pillar in the film industry. Every time a woman was abused, somehow she reached out to me. You know, and we are talking about Me Too movement now, but years, I'm talking about 25 years earlier, there was a young girl who was playing my younger sister, who was from Saukarpet. You understand, from Saukarpet. So she didn't speak the language very well, but she was there. We were in Nagarkoil shooting for a Telugu film, and she hadn't combed her hair. So I called her and I said, you're acting as my sister. How come you haven't combed your hair? She said, I'm upset. I've been angry for 2 days. She was like hardly 14 years old, 15 years old. And there was somebody trying to abuse her in the unit, you know. And when I said, like, you are educated, you go to a school, good school, so why didn't you react and tell her to get him to get lost? And that man was all of like 4 feet 8 inches. I'm not trying to say like height and everything. He was a 4 feet 8 inches man who, when he sees me, he will go like this. But just because he was a man, the way he was treating that young girl, I just went up to him and I said, you are getting out of my set. I don't want you around. You know, so when I was 20, I was doing this, Sangeetha. So that's what I did. I've been a crusader all my life. And now I'm happy to see somebody who's not just doing it at that timeline, but recording it so that it's there for the next generation. So I'm really happy about whatever you're doing. And
thank you so much. I really hope to be able to work with you more.
Sure. You know, you must have heard from Rupa. I run an NGO for single women. We have 300.
I believe so.
And we hear such horror stories from all of them. The one horror story that I cannot understand and I want to do something about it is when we have about 150 women, I just ask them this blunt, blatant question. If you don't wake up tomorrow, how many of you will be upset that you will not be alive tomorrow? There's not a single one who said they will be upset if they don't wake up the next day. Okay, my women, their ages are from 22 to 55. Okay, so it breaks my heart, which means there is so much of abuse that is happening in the society towards these women. You know what I mean? Like, how much of counseling is going to help? I think people like you, educating people around them who are making them feel miserable. I think that's what I mean. I don't know if I've answered your question, Dimple.
Yes, ma'am, you have. I mean, I'm really amazed, you know, with how much exposure can change our life. Like, you know, a little bit of exposure can dramatically shift our perspective of life.
Yes.
When we're raised in a protective environment, we don't know the other side exists. Only when we step out of home are we shocked with the horrors and the reality of life. And this is something that has happened with Sangeetha also. I know she has not offered to bare her soul on this particular panel, but I've heard a story. And it's gut-wrenching, you know. It takes empathy to recognize empathy. It takes kindness to receive kindness. And it takes struggles to recognize the struggles in other women's life. And you have gone through a lot of struggles as a young girl. I know you've lived on the streets at one point in time with no home and no parents to take care of you. You've crushed patriarchy.
I think the no bathrooms were the hardest bit, to be honest, of that whole experience.
And Sangeetha, I want you to share your story because it began with you willing to share your story. That's how you were able to reach out to these 12 women who are willing to bear their stories and we're willing to put their name to the story.
Sure.
There's no more hiding after this. So we'd love to hear your story.
I'd love to, and I'd love to share it, but I think Ms. Suhasini only has a limited time with us, and we've asked her to do a reading. Perhaps she would like to do the reading now because we don't want to hold you because we know how busy you are.
Yeah, during the pandemic, like you, I started writing. So I did about 5 short films which were shot in my friends' homes. I mean, Kabir ji will be happy to know that I approached some of my actor friends and I said, I'm just sending you a script, you shoot it in your house. So about 3 of them shot in their own houses. And then there is one that I did later on, which is coming in Amazon on October 16th. So we are having a press conference in the afternoon. So that's why I think
Wonderful.
I will take your leave. I mean, I'll just finish my work and whatever you wanted me to do. So please pardon me. So shall I go ahead with the reading?
Please.
Love letter to my parents. I have to confess, English is not my first language. Tamil is my language. I studied Tamil till I went to college. And when I went to college, the first sentence that my my chemistry professor said, it didn't get into my head at all, because what she said was anhydrous sodium chloride. Take a pinch of the whole day I was going up and down. I take a pinch of anhydrous sodium. Then my mother said, it means in Tamil, she said, "Oru chittigai ularnda uppai eduthukollavum." My language, why is it so complicated in English? So I started speaking English or reading English only when I was 16. So please pardon my language.
Ms. Suhasini, I lived in the UK for many, many years, and I can tell you with some assurance, your English is way better than most English people I know.
But still, it's not my first language. It is probably
It's
third
beautiful.
language. Love letter to my parents, my dearest, dearest parents. I'm so lucky to call you mine. In this lifetime, we've been given together. You've always been there for me to rely on, to fall back on. Everything you do for us. I believe you when you say this, or you have shown this in myriad different ways. You gave me the most amazing childhood, a safe home, a solid education, and some truly outstanding values in life. And these have stood me in good stead all these years I have walked this earth. But you also gave me something else, something you could have well done without. You gave me the worry of what will people say? மத்தவங்க என்ன சொல்லுவாங்க? అందరూ ఏం చెప్తారు? ఏం చెప్తారు? The worry of constantly second-guessing myself through the lens of other people's opinions and on the back of the self-destructive process, which turned me into a constant people pleaser. It reminds what we did in our childhood. You failed to give me the trust I needed and the trust in yourselves as well, that you had raised a child that could and would make sound decisions for herself. You denied me this, the God-given right to make my own mistakes and to learn from my own failures. And I so hope that someday you will learn what it was I had to learn to live without. As I turned 23, you thought it was the right time that I get married and start my life as an adult. Yes, you thought I was old enough to tie the knot, old enough to be parent with babies of my own, but not old enough to decide who this person was that I should choose to have children with. Your decisions for me were based on caste and family and what felt right for you rather than for me. I remember the day I told you I had a boyfriend. And I remember your bitter disappointment that I had chosen one out of communal boundaries. And so that love ended. And though it hurt and badly, I still wanted to make you proud of me, you see. And I married someone that ticked all the boxes for you. You never once asked me if I was happy. You told me instead to make sacrifices and endure, and that would make everything all better. Do you know that I was afraid to tell you how bad it was and how wrong this perfect person was for me? And when I decided to end the sham I was living, you refused to accept my reasons for doing so. While he had all the support of his family, I battled through it alone and isolated. And I faced your anger that I had chosen this way. And instead, you felt sorry for the man that had brought me low. And all you felt about the terrible time was that I had brought such shame to you both, a shame that was more unbearable for you than the 7 years of hell that I endured. And so, for years, you pretended that my suffering was something to be swept under the family carpet. And then I left. I moved countries, and I made a new life for myself. I met the most amazing man. But even this was not a choice you could accept. Nothing I said consoled or pacified you, because not only was he the wrong caste and the wrong country too, But this man I was in love with, was of the wrong religion and belief system. Once again, you failed to ask me if I was happy. But this time, I decided to do it my way, even if it meant disappointing you. This time, I decided to put myself first, and I hoped that you would love me enough to come to terms with it and be happy, both for me and the man I had chosen. Well, fate had a funny way of turning things around, and suddenly you both were forced to live with us. Now that you can see for yourself how good it is for me to live with with the choice I made, I truly hope that you're proud of me. I truly hope you accept me for what I am, and I accept the decisions I make for my own life, because I am proud of who I am today. I am proud to be the daughter you both raised, one who's strong and independent and has my own mind. And it is no small part because of you, my amazing parents, and I hope you know I love you. Saujanya Raj is a 33-year-old corporate lawyer who lives in Australia. Heart-wrenching, but so true. Thank you.
So beautifully read.
Excellent. No.
So beautifully read. Sangeetha, if you could unmute yourself. Thank you so much, Mrs. Suhasini. That was such a beautiful rendition of the story that Sangeetha has compiled for all of us to read, and for the person who bared her soul. Congratulations for being so brave. So, Sangeetha, if you'd like to offer Mrs. Suhasini goodbye message. I understand she has a busy schedule.
Ms. Suhasini, thank you so much for being here. I know how busy your schedule is at the moment. I'm very grateful to Rupa for connecting both of us, and it's been such a privilege to have you here, honestly. You are a voice for women in South India, and I'm being a South Indian woman mostly. I am so grateful and so blessed to have had you here today. Thank you, and all the very best of luck with your press conference today.
Thank you. Thank you, Kabir ji, and thank you, everyone. And thank you for letting me go early. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Suhasini. So that was the wonderful, ravishing Mrs. Suhasini reading out a story from the Naked Indian Woman, one of the 12 stories that has inspired all of us. So thank you so much for your time and for your gracious presence. And yes, back to Sangeetha now. Sangeetha,
I think we should let Mr. Kabir speak. He has a better voice than me. I really would like to hear from him.
But how about we start with your story? What motivated you to write this book? Your personal experience, because that is going to set a platform for the rest of the conversation. What is it that shook your soul?
My soul's been shaken since the moment I was born. I come from a military background, and my father was in the army. He's a wonderful, amazing doctor. My mother is, runs charities, and she does lots of amazing things. But yet somehow growing up, I was at the receiving end of a lot of abuse from the extended family, and fear, which seems to drive so much of what happens in this country, stopped my parents from speaking out. I was accused at the age of 14 of having an affair with my uncle. My grandfather threatened to break both my legs if I went near him again. I have been accused by another relative of stealing silver from his house. A friend's mother wanted to take me to the police station and file an FIR against me when her daughter ran away. I was the dark-skinned girl that didn't have any value, that didn't have any merit. There was just, a lot of ostracization, a lot of being pressed down, being told you can't do this, you're a girl, or your brother has to be a doctor, so you're not going to get the education you want. A lot of neglect, not necessarily from my parents, but certainly from the extended community. I was put into a college where I suffered terribly for 3 years. I tried to kill myself. I attempted to commit suicide, and I ran away to Bangalore on the back of all of that and lived in the streets for on and off for almost 11 months. The cantonment railway station and the Majestic bus station in Bangalore are very familiar to me. I know what it's like to go without food for 3 days. I know what it's like to go without water, to not have access to sanitation of any sort, to not have any friends, because at the age of 21, I learned very quickly who my friends were. And it was a very bitter lesson. I got stuck in a very abusive marriage. The man I married was living on this, I just sort of met him while I was living in the streets. He turned out to be incredibly violent. There wasn't a week that went by that I didn't get beaten black and blue. I don't know if you all can see this, but he broke my nose. I can't hear very well out of my right ear because he broke my right eardrum. He broke my thumb. He cracked a rib. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of all that, he did to me. I had problems with my in-laws. And the worst part, and this is why this book is important for me, I had people around me at that time. One, I was too scared to speak up and tell people what was happening to me because I thought the shame was on me. My husband was beating me. This was my fault. And the few people I tried to tell didn't want to listen. No one wanted to hear. I confronted a friend of mine a few years ago. I bumped into him in Brussels and asked him, I said, you knew my ex-husband was hitting me and hitting me really badly. Why didn't you ever step in? You were a bodybuilder. You were like this big, Punjabi strong guy, And his response to me was, oh, it really wasn't any of our business. And I'm sorry, when a woman is being beaten, when any human being is being subjected to violence, that is not their fault. It is everybody's problem. And for me, what's happening to women, because I've experienced so much of it, the colorism, the gender disparity, the way education systems are set up, I've been through it, divorce, violence, marital rape, you name it, I've been through it all. And that's why I had to write this book. It will probably be the last book I will ever write, but I do believe this is my magnum opus. I want to do it for other women because I do not want any woman to go through it. I don't want her to starve on the streets. I don't want her to know that. I want her to know there are other women going through what she is going through. I want every woman to know there is someone out there who will have their back. And I want every woman to know she can speak up. It's taken me 50 years to speak up. I don't want other women to wait that long. I don't want them to make the mistakes I made. And it's just literally as simple as that.
Gosh, Sangeetha, it's such a heartbreaking story. I can't tell you, I could actually feel my heart clench. I could feel my stomach squeeze hearing all of the stories, and the fact that you survived it all. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, marital abuse, domestic, verbal, emotional abuse, and that betrayal that you feel when your parents don't stand up for who you are and for not believing in you. It's always a woman's fault in every situation. And like you said, it's not the victim's fault, it's everybody's fault for what happened to that person. And I must, applaud you for the courage you've shown, the bravery you've shown for living such a beautiful, graceful life in the face of adversity and never ever showing your scars to people despite what you've been through. You've been a beacon of hope and a lot of strength to others. And I must praise you for that. So hats off to you for surviving and coming so far.
I do have to say a word about my parents over here. While it's been a very fractious relationship for a very long time, they have come forward to support me in recent times. They have understood what I went through. Things are much better. They have come out in open support of me in a wonderful way. And they're very supportive of this book as well, actually, which is absolutely wonderful. It's groundbreaking for me. It's a new step in all the right directions, and I'm really delighted. I learned good things from them. All the talent I have, my dancing, my abilities with music, my ability to just fight and soldier on, that comes from my mother. My ability to do good, do lots and lots of charity without expecting anything in return, that comes from my dad. So I can't say it was all bad.
Lovely, lovely. There's always room for hope and room for change. And children come from their parents, but it's also the child's responsibility after a few years of understanding to guide the parents in the right direction or make them see concepts or ideas that they didn't see before. And I want to bring Mr. Kabir into this conversation here. After hearing Sangeetha's story, what kind of advice do you have for women who are in the same boat as Sangeetha? And I can tell you, like, all of us are actually in the same boat. All the women on this platform have a story to tell. Every woman that you come across and cross paths with will have a story to tell how she was wronged and how she bore it. What advice do you have from a male perspective or from a human perspective, rather, to these women who've survived and who carry these scars?
The Sangeetha's story and the stories in this book are really heartrending stories, and they're stories of great pain and great agony and great suffering that women have endured and are enduring. And I think everyone needs to speak out. Everyone needs to feel part of standing up for human rights, not just women's rights, human rights, and being more human. But I think I need to step back a bit and for a moment and say, where did all this come from? Where did all this come from? Firstly, it's a historical issue. Right from the time of the caveman gatherer, when men went out and hunted and women stayed back and raised the kids, women were seen as the childbearers. Even as society then moved into cities, businesses started, people became merchants, shopkeepers, etc. The women were still in the background. It was the men who were the bankers, the merchants, the people that earned the money and brought it home for the family. So women were still seen as nothing more than child bearers. Stay in your place, don't venture out, raise kids. This was the mentality from the day of the caveman. As society has progressed, this historical problem just continued because it was sort of an attitude that was built in and continued. The other thing is not just a historical problem, it's a global problem. Around the world, women have been perceived in this way. Even very developed countries like England and Switzerland only gave vote to the women about 100 years ago. So this is an ongoing battle that is being fought. And it is today, the question of women's equality is being advanced. But let me also, in the midst of all the atrocities against women and what happens to women in India, also take a step back and say, let's count our blessings here. We are not Saudi Arabia. We are not Yemen. We are not Ethiopia. We are not even Pakistan, where a single woman living alone is under threat of being raped at any point without having recourse, the courage to go to the police station. So there are blessings. And also the laws on the books in India are much stronger today than they've ever been against the violence, for punishments for violence against women, for rape, women's ability to complain against men doing things to them. This we should acknowledge, salute, and say India is far more advanced than many other countries in the developing world, especially in terms of the legal framework. Now, it is true that despite all this, violence against women continues because there is still the patriarchal mindset. There is still the feeling of I am superior, you are inferior. There is still issues of economic dependence that women have to deal with. And therefore, it's important that these issues remain in our mind while we address the question of women being abused the way they are. And I think what Sangeetha is doing is very important. She's giving a voice to people. She's putting it together on a platform. And by the way, Sangeetha, I think you should write more books. You shouldn't write more.
Maybe I should write one with you.
Why not? Why not? Write more books, because even if you don't write about this subject, the very fact that you have gone through this will reflect in other works that you do. And therefore, that is a very rich and
thank you. Thank you for the encouragement. Thank you.
You must write well.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from you.
So, my advice is, keep raising the voice of human rights or women's rights. That women are not unequal in any way. That they deserve to be treated with respect, equality, and also a message not just for men. It's a message for women who raise their boys and their sons with that attitude. And that has to be told to women as well.
Yes.
So these stereotypes have to be left behind, but it does take time. And the way it changes is when there's persistent pressure to do so. When the realities start to change, when people say this is not acceptable. And that percolates down to boys from the time they are school children. And their attitude towards other girls has to be checked if they're wrong and told, no, women have to be treated with respect. They're no less than you. Because this mindset has come down historically, geographically, in terms of time, in terms of space, and it has to be changed just by the pressure of social opinion. And that does happen. So keep raising your voice.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, very nicely said. And I must point out to the viewers who's sitting there, the polarity of the discussion here. We have a female voice and we have a male voice, both talking about the equality of human rights, the right for a woman and a man both to breathe equally with freedom, without judgment, without bias, without prejudices. And let me tell you the bipolarity of the situation. Mr. Kabir, I couldn't help but notice the two beautiful frames behind you in the picture, Mother India and Marilyn Monroe's picture, diabolically opposite. Okay, diabolically opposite characters. One lived her life unapologetically, very sexy, very sensual, and big fan of hers, Marilyn Monroe. And on the other side, we have Mother India, whose sacrifices were glorified on the silver screen, whose sacrifices were glorified. And that also has become integral or a part of our culture, you know, where we glorify sacrifices. If a woman sacrifices, we applaud her, we laud her, we give her a bravery medal, which doesn't even exist, by the way, telling her, oh, you did a wonderful job. But if a woman chooses not to sacrifice, but chooses to stand up for her ideas, her voices, her opinion, her career, she's easily characterized as a loose character person. That's like a word very randomly and loosely used in our language and our culture. What do you have to say about that? Because, you know, I love how feminist you are, but at the same time, you have these two diabolically opposite pictures in your background, which speak of two different values. And, you know, Sangeetha on the other side has a very strong male voice in the background you haven't heard of. Her wonderful partner who's been supporting her through the journey, which is amazing. It's nice to have a male voice supporting her story, and it's nice to hear the female opinions through a male voice like yours. What do you have to say for the role of media and the role of this, spontaneity as well as this need for projection?
Yeah. You know, Marilyn Monroe represented small town girl coming and doing whatever it took to become the icon that she became. And her legacy and her revenge ultimately is the fame she got and the icon she became. Mother India, yes, there's great sacrifice, but don't forget that in Mother India, the most iconic shot for me was when the mother shot the son, you know, when she says Birju and she shoots. You know, that's, it's incredible that the courage the mother had to do that, you know. This represents a whole range of human emotions. I mean, it's a classic film. It's a film that came from the earth, a film that came from feelings, a film that came from sacrifice. Also, a story of great courage. You know, Mother India is a story of great courage. We have all these symbols. We have all these symbols. But the important thing is, I have these two pictures of Marilyn Monroe and Mother India because I like iconic things. Both of them are icons in their own way, representing different continents, different realities, but representing something that has endured and something that one wants to remember and have in one's environment. But like I said, you know, I feel, just 1 minute, I can't read. Right. I just want to say, my wife is reminding me that my granddaughter, Alaya, painted that picture of Marilyn.
How sweet.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
My wife is, yeah, I've just remembered, my wife is also a product of a home where the father abandoned her mother with 6 children. Her mother raised 6 children single-handedly in England. So that's, again, another story of extraordinary courage. And all of them are doing well. All of them have turned out great. But that's a case where the father was abusive and walked away and abandoned them with no economic support. And yet, a woman's courage ensured that these children were raised and raised well and went on to do and are doing wonderfully in life. So that's a great woman's story too. Sorry, I can't hear.
That's the first story in my book. It's called A Mother's Love. It's about that, about a woman who was abandoned and raised her children. But I was just wondering, I think we're running out of time quite shortly, Mr. Bedi, and I was wondering if you would like to do your reading now, if you're happy to.
Okay. This story is, I mean, there are far harsher stories in your book.
Oh, yes, there are. You're welcome to read whatever you like, by the way.
Just because this all shows, that there is another level of suffering, another type of suffering that women endure. And I think you've chosen to do this in a very much more subtle way, and I really like that, because it's easy to take things that are atrocious and make and dramatize it and sensationalize it. This is not sensationalizing. This is more about the suffering of quiet endurance, And
It is, as Thoreau beautifully said, most men live lives of quiet suffering. I think this story embodies that quite well.
right. So this is called Rani of Jhansi. I was born in Jhansi, heir to the life and legend of that great queen. This is the story.
Call glory. Sorry.
She's watching on.
Sorry, should I start again?
I think we'll glitch here.
Okay, should I start again? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll start. She's called Rani of Jhansi. I was born in Jhansi, heir to the life and the legend of that great queen. This is the story of my battle. My father was an army man, a drinking man. Violence was the norm, and my poor mother suffered much. She once tried to kill herself. This is one of my clearest memories of childhood. But he provided well for us and took me places and brought me lots of pretty clothes. I was convent educated. I graduated with honors. I was a proud member of the National Cadet Corps. And after schooling was done, I chose my path and trained to be a policewoman when life still held hope and dreams. But then I went to visit an aunt where the handsomest of young men saw me. And so love intervened in the course of my life and set me on a different path. He pursued me relentlessly, and I was charmed. And my mother thought this would be a good match. A fine young man who did not drink, as her man had done. And I was married in order that I would not suffer her fate. I became a housewife, a mother of 2 beautiful boys, and the possession of a man was strict and suspicious and doubted my every move. Though we were well off, my husband, a respected business owner, love intervened yet again, and everything changed. For the love of a friend, my husband lost everything. All he had ever worked for, and everything we ever owned. And my boys and I were suddenly poor, living in a tiny one-room shack high among the tea gardens and swirling clouds, where the rent was an unaffordable 200 rupees. I was given 50 rupees a week to manage the household. How was this humanly possible? Luckily, my husband was rarely home, searching for work all day long, wherever and whenever he could find it. So I went out secretly as soon as he left to pluck tea to make ends meet from those lush green slopes around my shack, carrying bushels of green leaves every day in order to educate my boys. And then fate intervened again. A neighbor said a couple from foreign were looking for someone to work for them, and they visited only rarely. It seemed a good deal, and there was a nice house to stay in too. So I went with my eldest son and asked if I could work for them, and thus began a new chapter in my life. Now for over a decade I've toiled in this grand place. My boys are grown up, one with a wife and child of his own. And my employers, I suppose, can record better than most. But I wonder, do they know what it is like to run 2 homes, theirs and mine, every day? To face them with a cheerful smile after I have been beaten? To stoop down with an aching back to clean an obscenely large home? After a night which saw a raging fight between my sons and their father, who grew bitter. After a night where I saw a raging fight between my sons and their father, who grew more bitter each day? Do they know while I'm grateful for the work, it hurts me to see their wealth? Do we call from a much-needed nap to cook and serve, to clean their bathrooms and wash their clothes, and to be scolded for not putting a chair back in place? Do they know the shame I feel when something is misplaced? The fear that I will be blamed and lose everything again? That they hold my future and that of my sons in the palm of their wealthy hands? Do they know that my boys were selected for sporting honors, but we had not the money to help them rise, to enable our children to walk the road to fame? Do they know I envy their freedom and luxury that I might once have had? And do they know that accident of birth is all that separates them from me? Do they know that the money they spend on shopping in just a day is that which they pay me to toil a grueling and punishing, humiliating month? Do they know what it feels like not to be able to visit my own mother who is old without permission from my husband or them, and never know the freedom of my choice? Do they know that my service to them is compulsory? Or would they do what I do and at this price? Do they know that despite it all, love and only love compels me to keep my family whole and strong? And so I work for them and labor long hours with the pleasantest of smiles on my face. The anger, insults, and harsh tones are borne without demur, without complaint, without choice. Do they know that I was once like them, free, with bright and shining future and few cares, a girl who spoke English and wore the authority of the Indian police force with pride? Do they know how I was a much-loved daughter who loved learning and reading and new clothes? Do they know that I am strong and that I have survived it all? The loss of face, the loss of pride, the loss of dignity, that I am not just their cook and maid, but a human who once longed for so much, that I too had wants and have them still, that I too am flesh and blood like them? Do they know that I was born in Jhansi, and though my battles are different from hers, and though my calling in this life is humble, I too am a queen who serves? Written by Gloria L., who works as a housekeeper for the curator of the book. She's 53 years old and lives in Noor, India.
I'm going to bring on the lady. Gloria, come and bend down over here. Come and say hi. This is the lady whose story you just read. Hi, sir. She's a big fan of yours. Yes. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Such a beautiful reading, Kabir. So thank you so much for giving your voice to her story, to her struggles, to her. I think this is like probably one of the best compliments to have Kabir sir's voice being lent to someone's story. So bravo, to the bravery and courage that this lady has shown in, bearing her soul and sharing her story with us. I have another interesting question actually for Sangeetha to keep this panel discussion balanced, because if there is black, there is white. If there is darkness, there is light. If there's a disease, there is a remedy. If there is a story, there is always going to be a little criticism somewhere, which I want to ask.
Left.
Yes, this is a book of activism and you're an activist yourself. And these are stories of 12 Indian women. Aren't you scared that you could be perceived as someone who's anti-men because you've not spoken about the stories of men? Do you have something to say about that? Just for a healthy discussion.
Yes, it is definitely not anti-men, for the simple reason I wouldn't have been leaping like a lunatic the moment Mr. Bedi agreed to do my book launch. There's definitely a thread that runs through the book, which is quite, sort of talks about how women can be women's worst enemies. I will say this again and again until I'm blue in the face. The enemy of feminism is not men. The enemy of feminism is patriarchy, and women can support patriarchy far better than men can. And I have had personal experience with this. The men in my life have been the greatest support. I'm so grateful to all of them. There are wonderful men like Mr. Bedi and a slew of others who come forward and quietly work in the background to redress this terrible imbalance. So no, I don't think it's anti-men. Certainly it is very pro-women, but just because it's pro-women, it doesn't necessarily make it anti-men.
Well said. Very well said, Sangeetha. Thank you so much for making that
you.
clarification so that the viewers that we have, both men and women, don't feel offended at any point in time. Since we're coming towards the close of the panel, I'd like, to ask Mr. Kabir Bedi if he has any message for the viewers and for those who plan to read the book, how to prepare themselves mentally, and what should they expect from this book now that you've read the book and you've also read out one particular story yourself.
I think they should expect some very human stories and deeply felt stories and stories that are moving. And I think they should be motivated to do something for the cause. You know, the generation of my parents were a generation that lived for causes. They lived and died for causes. My parents were part of the freedom struggle. My mother was one of the handpicked Satyagrahis of Mahatma Gandhi. My father was an orator. They literally gave their lives. I mean, I've written about my book, which is coming out in December. It's they gave their lives for this, and we still have a social conscience, but being part of causes is an option today. You know, it's not life and death that we've got to get the country free. We've got to get our relatives out of jail. We've got to end this colonial oppression. There is all kinds of oppression around us, and it's exemplified by this book and what's been put into this book. And people should join that cause and in raising the consciousness. And this is, you can do it by joining organizations, or you can do it just by changing the reality around you, in your building, in your society, in your school, in your college, in your workplace. This is something that doesn't need organizations to be joined. You can, of course. You can found organizations. But it can be done on a day-to-day basis. I'm a great believer in the power of individuals changing the course of causes and adding to the strength of causes. Because ultimately, it's the individual that does it all. So spread the word, be conscious, make those changes not in grand ways, in little ways. If you see a boy treating a little girl, tell him, no, this is not on. You don't treat her like that. She's your equal. Those kind of messages have the greatest impact. And I really salute Sangeetha for putting these stories together, because these women had great courage in bearing their souls and putting these accounts down. And I think that will be a great strength for other women who have been through the same things, who want to stop those things, to read this book and say, this book is an important book to read, and it must be read. It's been put together with a lot of love, a lot of pain, a lot of effort, and a lot of honesty. And the word and the messages of the book should be spread so that people who think alike can gather and do things individually and collectively to change that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Bedi. You've been wonderful. I love the work that you do on all fronts of your life. You've been an inspiration to me since I've been a child, and it has truly been my honor and my privilege to have you on this panel. Thank you so much for launching my book, and thank you to Ms. Suhasini, who's no longer here. Yes, thank you. And I hope I'll be in touch with you going forwards. And if there's anything I can ever do to say thank you in a more proactive way for you, I hope you let me know.
All right, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kabir sir, for launching Sangeetha's. Sangeetha, before we close the panel, I have one final question. Do you have any special mention for this book? Because I know a lot of hearts have been contributing their stories to you.
I'd like to give a big shout out to Tara and to Muskan and Natalie and Fenella, who've been great supports to my book, to my uncle Machendran, who's been like a dad, to my sister-in-law Sujata. There's just a slew of people I need to thank. I would need a whole other hour to do this. But mostly thank you to you, Dimple. You've enabled so much for me. You've come on board. And I could not have had finer people to launch my book for me than the three I've had today. Thank you so much.
Huge congratulations. Huge congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
All the best.
Right. Hearty congratulations to Sangeetha for the launch of the beautiful book, The Naked Indian Woman. And thank you so much to Mr. Kabir Bedi for launching this book. For those of you who are watching this YouTube live, trust me, you want to read this book. I finished like half a book in one evening, and it had gut-wrenching stories, but at the same time, it made me smile and cry in the same note. This is what this book is going to do. It's going to shake you in your chair and make you want to think how to become a better human being. So thank you to Sangeetha for launching this book. And thank you so much to Mr. Kabir Bedi for coming on board to launch this book on behalf of all of us.
Success. Congratulations.
God bless. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kabir sir. And Sangeetha, if you have any final message for the viewers, you could continue.
I think I'll save that towards the end of this evening. But Dimple, thank you. You've been simply tremendous. You're a fantastic moderator and a fantastic human.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you so much. Lots of love to everybody who's been watching. And I'm going to see Sangeetha on the other side of this discussion very soon. Lots of love. Bye, Sangeetha.